Judge Harvey, Mr. Tran, please call the case.
This is case 21-MJ-14, United States of America versus Anton Joseph Giannett. This is scheduled to be a status hearing to be held by video. Will the parties please introduce themselves to the court, beginning with the government?
Good afternoon, Liz Alois of the United States.
Zach Thornley for Anton Giannett, who is present virtually today, Your Honor.
Afternoon, Judge. Joseph Scrifano, local counsel for Mr. Giannett.
John Cope,
I don't see
Trial Services.
I don't see Mr. Giannett. Maybe he's just not on my screen. Where is he? Mr. Giannett? There he is.
Hello?
Can you hear me, Mr. Giannett?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I want to remind anyone who may be listening on the public line that these proceedings may not be recorded or rebroadcast. Pursuant to Chief Judge Howe's Standing Order of 20-20, if anyone were to violate that prohibition, they could be sanctioned, including removal of court-issued media credentials, exclusion from future proceedings, any other sanction that I may deem appropriate. So please, no recording or rebroadcasting these proceedings. I don't know which defense counsel is going to be addressing me, but I do want to know whether or not your client agrees to proceed here today remotely by video and waives his right to an in-person hearing pursuant to the CARES Act.
Yes, Your Honor, we do.
All right, I called this hearing because pretrial, and I hope there's someone on the phone from pretrial. Is it Mr. Copes? Are you on the phone?
Yes, Your Honor. John Cope, Pretrial Services.
Is there anyone at the hearing who's actually been supervising Mr. Giannett?
Yes, I actually have USPO TS on the phone, but I can have her dial in right now.
Yeah, I think she should dial in. I mean, I want to hear directly from her what's been going on. I don't fully understand it.
Yes, Your Honor. One moment. Of course,
I'll give you a moment to have her dial in.
Okay, she should be on now.
Hey, Mr. Copes, was she able to dial in?
Hi, good afternoon, Your Honor. This is Officer Rebecca Teach calling with Pretrial Services in the District of Arizona. Can you hear me?
Pronounce your last name again.
Sure, it's Teach, like teacher.
Like teacher, got it. Okay, well, thank you so much for dialing in. I mean, I think Mr. Copes filed this report in this jurisdiction, but I think most of the information came from you since you're the one who's been actively supervising Mr. Giannett. Mr. Giannett, just so that you're understanding what's happening here today, pretrial has filed a compliance report, actually a non-compliance report with respect to yourself, and we're going to hear from the pretrial services officer, Ms. Teach, here in a moment, where she can explain in more detail what she thinks that you did and how it was not in compliance with your conditions of release. What pretrial has asked is that you be removed from their supervision, removed from the program, which means, just let me translate that for you, that means that if you cannot comply with your conditions of release, if you are removed from supervision, you're held pending trial in this case. I'll order you to report to whatever jurisdiction you're in, the United States Marshal there, for your arrest and further processing up here so that you will be housed in DC jail for the pendency of this case. So that's what this hearing's about. I just want to make sure that you understand that. Ms. Teach, I'll hear from you to what you think the issue was with Mr. Giannett and his supervision.
Okay. Well, I reached out to Officer Copes because on September 27th, when I spoke with Mr. Giannett, he'd indicated to me that he was no longer residing in Arizona, that he was in fact residing in Florida, and that he had rented a property in the state of Florida at an address located in Clearwater. Would you like that exact address?
No, I don't need the exact address.
Okay. And he provided a lease that he had signed as a rental agreement that dates an estimated commencement date of September 8th of 2021. So Pretrial Services in Arizona reached out to the charging district, Pretrial Services Officer Copes, and made them aware of the fact that the District of Arizona would obviously struggle to continue to supervise the defendant as he was no longer residing in Arizona. And upon review of his conditions of release, it indicates, and I don't have them in front of me exactly, I know the wording is a bit different district to district, but I believe it is something to the effect that he is to provide pretrial services notice prior to moving. And to Mr. Giannett's credit, he travels quite frequently throughout the nation and does appear to report his travels. Just beginning June 4th to August 30th, he traveled around the nation on approximately 19 separate occasions and reported those movements and travels to pretrial. But the concern with the District of Arizona is that he reported he also is no longer residing in Arizona about 3 weeks after he'd signed that lease with the plans to reside in a different state.
So that I'm clear, Ms. Teach, Mr. Giannett, he apparently was in Florida, end of September. Had he asked or notified you of his travel to Florida?
Look and see. I know on August 30th, he'd indicated plans to travel to Los Angeles, California, and return on September 3rd. He'd reported police contact with Pinellas County Sheriff's Office on September 27th.
I don't know where that is.
That is in Florida.
Okay.
And he'd reported travel to and from Florida and Scottsdale between September 15th and September 18th. So I think to more clearly answer your question, on Wednesday, September 15th in the evening, he'd contacted me via text to indicate a new trial date that was set that he planned to appear for and plans to travel to Arizona for that court date on a lower court matter, and then return back to Florida on a following Monday. That would probably be in close relation to September 15th. And then the next contact I had with him was via text on September 27th when he informed of the police contact with the county sheriff's office located in Florida. And that's when he'd reported to me that the text he sent was, had to file a police report, people threw cans at my house. So I inquired back if he was living in Florida when he'd referenced my house. And at that point in time, he did, through conversation, then provide documentation, because I'd asked for it, the copy of his lease agreement that was signed. I'm not sure the exact date it was signed here. Let me look and see. But it was set to commence on September 8th. He signed it on August 31st of 2021 with the intent to reside in Florida, and had not mentioned to me that he'd signed this lease or had any intent of residing in Florida until I'd questioned him about it based on the wording that he used in his text message on Monday, September 27th.
Okay, but to be clear, the issue that you have is his failure to report to you his change of residence, his change of address, not his failure to report to you or to notify you of travel outside of his home jurisdiction. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Your Honor. And just to be clear, too, I have no issue. I'm just simply reporting to the court the actions or failure of the actions by the defendant to abide by his conditions.
Okay. Well, I mean, the request, and I don't know if this is from you or from Mr. Copes, is removal from supervision. That's how I read the report. So I assume that this is the basis for that request.
And I
in any
apologize,
event,
Your Honor, I have not seen that report, so my apologies. We simply, the way the courtesy supervision typically operates is the supervising district will report to the charging district within pretrial services as to the compliance or noncompliance of the defendant. And then the pretrial services office in the charging district will typically handle violations or report compliance directly to that court. I don't mind appearing in any manner, but as pretrial services stance in the District of Arizona is simply that we can't continue to monitor a defendant that's not residing in our state.
all right. Well, I'll hear from counsel for Mr. Giannett. It does sound like there is a compliance issue here. I've been trying to get the exact language for his conditions of release, but Ms. Teach is correct. There's certainly included there an obligation to inform either the court or pretrial of any change of his address. I do see a filing from the defense. I think it's on October 1st, which does in fact inform the court of that change of residence, his new address, Florida. But that was on October 1st. As Ms. Teach indicated, she has a lease indicating that he had rented a house as early as late October, and he certainly communicated with her in late September and suggested in his text that he was living there. That was his complaint to law enforcement at that time. Someone was throwing cans at his house. So he raised the issue, well, how could that be? Because you're in Florida. So I appreciate that someone, perhaps counsel, thought it wise to alert the court of this on October 1st. There does seem to be a compliance issue prior to that date. Hear from the defense.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think as Ms. Rebecca noted, Mr. Giannett has complied with every single time. He's been ordered to alert pretrial services for every single time he goes anywhere, any address he's at, anytime he goes anywhere. And he's done so over, I think she mentioned 19 times. He's complied, given the exact address, given his exact hotel room when he stayed in hotels. This address, so he's maintained the address in Arizona. That's his parents' address that he's had in Arizona. My understanding is that when he signed the lease for Florida, he was still in Arizona because we had a misdemeanor bench trial that we've been conducting in Arizona. And so as far as the actual change of address, my belief, Your Honor, is that he informed pretrial services of that at the time that he actually intended to change his address. So I think there are a total of, 10, maybe 11 different addresses in Florida that he moved around to from time to time because he was spending so much time there. And I think that the purpose of signing a lease there was to not be moving around so much and have a more stable place instead of going from place to place in Florida. So in my estimation, Your Honor, this is a matter of semantics in terms of the exact date of when he did or didn't change his address. Every single time that he said, from the last time that we spoke with Your Honor, it was required that he report any law enforcement contact, even if it's positive contact, if you will. He's complied with every single thing. I think that it's an extreme move to hold him in custody when he's followed everything that he's supposed to follow.
Well, it's not semantics. I mean, he has to be supervised by a pretrial services agency wherever he's residing. So, it's certainly not semantics for him to report to pretrial when he has changed his address.
I'm not saying it's semantics for him to report, Your Honor. That goes without saying. And that's what I'm saying is that he has been reporting. What I'm saying is that he went back and forth to Florida so much, and he's maintained his Arizona address that, and at the time that he signed his lease, again, he was in Arizona still. I know that because he was with me in trial. So I guess what I'm getting at is that despite the fact that he signed a lease, that doesn't mean that he was actually in Florida and that he had changed his address at that point. I mean, not to go down a rabbit hole here, but he could sign a lease in every state in the union if he wants to. That doesn't mean that he's residing there.
So, counsel, when's your understanding that he changed his residence?
My understanding, Your Honor, is essentially when he came back from the bench trial that we had, and one second, Your Honor. And I believe that was the 20th. Is that right, Tim? 20th? And I have a copy of a text to pretrial services on the 18th that he was going to that address.
What did that text say?
Your Honor, I believe it just mentions that he's going to be heading to that address. I don't know that
does it say that he's changing his residence as of that date?
Tim, can you resend that text from the 18th?
Yeah, I can. Am I able to speak real quick?
No. I'll give you a moment to speak to your attorney in a breakout room if you wish.
Okay.
If you could briefly, Your Honor, that would be great.
All right.
I could, if you're inclined, Your Honor, to Officer Rebecca Teach with Pretrial Services in Arizona, I can review text chains from the defendant beginning as early as Monday, August 30th, if you're inclined to know what he reported to pretrial.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out when he reported his change of residence, if it was earlier than October 1. I know he did on October 1.
Not to pretrial services, Your Honor. On Monday, August 30th, he provided via text message information stating he was flying to Los Angeles and an address as to where he would be staying in Los Angeles. And it wasn't until conversation on September 27th that he reported, or he provided at this officer's request a copy of his lease that he signed on August 31st that had a commencement date of September 8th. So just to be clear, and I haven't seen the documentation filed with the court by pretrial services, but the court order for his conditions of release number 3 is separate from the court order of conditions of release number 7F. Number 3 is what I am discussing here in court, or the violation that I had reported to Officer Copes regarding the defendant must advise the court or pretrial services office in writing before making a change of residence or telephone number, versus number 7F that reports or requires the defendant to report to pretrial services in advance all of his travel outside Arizona. Pretrial service has no issue with the defendant reporting his travel. It is specifically the violation at hand that was reported to DC is his failure to report his change in residence. And pretrial services can only monitor the defendant or be aware of his whereabouts based on what he self-reports since his removal from GPS. So we can only monitor or know where he's at based on what he self-reports.
All right, that was clear. I'll give the defense a moment. Please, Mr. Tran, put them into a sealed breakout room.
I just received that report, Your Honor, so I'll take a look at that as well.
Okay, thank you. go back on the record. Yes, counsel?
If I may, Judge, Joseph Scripano on behalf of Mr. Giannett. It seems to me that this is an issue of when Mr. Giannett's when his intent was to permanently reside in Florida. He signed the lease when he signed the lease with the intention of going back and forth between Arizona and Florida. His intent is to make the Florida address his permanent home as of November 1. His parents are selling their house there. He still has business in Arizona with the court case that Mr. Thornley represents him on. And, you know, it's sort of like having two residences going back and forth. And I can understand pretrial frustration. I certainly can understand the court's frustration. But I really think the appropriate action here is to have his supervision transferred to the appropriate district in Florida as of November 1st, once he wraps up the remaining things, the court case in particular, that are causing him to go back and forth. It also sounds like there was just a lot of communication back and forth about travel. And so when he's saying, I'm traveling to Florida, in his mind, he's not moving to Florida. He's traveling there and traveling back. And as of November 1, that's sort of the day where you change your voter registration, you change your driver's license, you establish it as your permanent residency. And again, I think in some sense, it may be a bit of a misunderstanding.
Okay, and did you say that as of November 1,
that's correct. And
permanent residence is going to be in Florida?
That's correct, Judge, and that's consistent with what Mr. Thornley filed with the court.
And how long, I mean, does he anticipate living in Florida for some time?
Yes, Judge, I do think he has travel plans, you know, for various reasons that he would continue to notify pretrial in Florida once his supervision was transferred over there. But he does intend to make it his permanent residence. In fact, he did say his parents intended to sell their home in Arizona, which is what his sort of Arizona address is, you know.
Okay.
Your Honor, if I could just add just one small thing. It's because of some of the back and forth that he's had to do for traveling, and the fact that he hadn't considered Florida his permanent residence yet. He hasn't changed any of his documents, any of his driver's license, any of those things as well. But he intends to, as soon as we get this court case wrapped up that's in Scottsdale, Arizona here.
Mr. Giannett, I do want to make sure that you understand, because I finally have your conditions of release in front of me. So I'm going to read the operative one, okay? The defendant must advise the court or pretrial services or the supervising officer in writing before making any change of residence or telephone number. Giannett, I just want to make sure you understand that now. Yes or no? You're muted.
Yes.
Okay, government, you haven't spoken. I don't know if you need to weigh in on this, but.
Yes, Your Honor. The government suggests that Mr. Giannett should stay put in Arizona until November 1 so that he can be effectively supervised, and that we should have another hearing to hear what supervision options are available in Florida, seeing as if his supervision is going to be transferred to pretrial in Florida, it would seem prudent to have a conversation with them in advance of that to see how they propose handling it.
One moment. Okay, well, I mean, I don't know if it's going to get any clearer than it is today. I did look back at the notice that he filed with the court, and I missed the clause which says effective November 1. I thought it was effective as of the date of that filing, which was October 8th. So I think he has let everyone know now that he plans on changing his residence formally to Florida. So I want to ask pretrial. It would seem to me that as of November 1, we need to change his supervising agency to whatever judicial district his house is located in. Folks?
John Coles, pretrial service. Yes, Your Honor. Pretrial services for the District of Columbia will reach out to the jurisdiction where the defendant will reside, and we will update the court on the courtesy supervision that is to be provided in Florida.
Okay, we've got to get that supervision, moved by November 1st. Mr. Giannett, we're going to have you supervised as of November 1st by a different supervising agency. I don't know what judicial district your home is located in. If it's the Middle District, does counsel know? Counsel for Mr. Giannett, do you know what the judicial district is?
In Florida, Your Honor?
Yes, based on his new address.
I'm not sure, Your Honor. I haven't looked that up.
All right, well, pretrial will figure it out. Mr. Giannett, so you will be supervised by Florida Pretrial Services Agency as of November 1. Direct that pretrial works that out and establishes new courtesy supervision for Mr. Giannett. Mr. Giannett, until that time, though, you're being supervised out of Arizona. So you need to continue to notify pretrial services of all your travel outside of Arizona. When you formally move to whatever judicial district you are going to be living in Florida, and your attorneys can advise you of what that district is, then you will be obligated to notify pretrial in Florida of any travel outside of that judicial district, outside of Florida. You understand all of that, Mr. Giannett?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. I don't know what more we can do here today. Government, anything further?
No, Your Honor. I would just note that there is a pending motion for a protective order in this matter, and that we consulted with the defense and collectively agree that setting another status out 60 days would be appropriate to allow for review of discovery and the potential for a pretrial resolution.
When was the protective order filed?
I think just in the last day or two.
Okay. Do we have a next date in this case? There must have been a date. This was a date that I requested, but there must have already been a next date in the case.
As far as my calendar goes, Judge, this was already on my calendar for October 20th. I think this was the next date. It just coincided with the report that was filed.
Okay, good enough. So you want to schedule this for another status 60 days out until all time between now and that date? Correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Does the defense agree with that?
We do, Your Honor.
Well, 60 days will take us out to December 20th. We are trying to move all these January 6 cases to either Tuesdays or Thursdays. So we'll schedule this for December 21st, which is a Tuesday at 1 p.m. for continued status in this case. I'll toll all time between now and that date for purposes of any calculation of the Speedy Trial Act. For the reasons stated by the government with the consent of the defense, I do find that such an exclusion of time be in the interest of justice and outweigh the interest of the defendant, the public, in a speedy trial. Anything further, government?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Counsel for the defense, I'm going to direct you to please, Mr. Giannett should already have them, but work with him now. Make sure that he has read through, again, all of his conditions of release. He needs to read every word of them.
Understood, Judge.
Anything further from the defense?
No, Your Honor.
All right, then. Parties are excused.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer Teach will exit the line.
You have been added to the waiting room. You cannot talk or listen until the host admits you to the meeting.